I'm just telling you, just to help you fill your space. I know it's not easy.
He originated mine. For this to be a PS4 game.
When you read a story that's only in the show, maybe you heard I really do. Yes. And I'm from the she's a whole song, she was just an report. When you killed yes, so yeah. Sometimes she gets maybe I'm just too tired. Yeah, anyway, I wouldn't give up. Keep it on the radar as it develops, right?
Yeah, I know, the one that matters. So,
what?
all right. Are we always with Sea-Tac or the dog?
I think you just
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm always on the outside.
Not when you're a resident.
Vacation during
Every single time I open it. This cyber attack, that's probably like the most real about it. Alright.
She's a woman who lots of
Right?
This is Commissioner Hamdi Mohammed, who's echoing. This is Commissioner Hamdi Mohammed convening the regular meeting of January 14, 2025. The time is now 12:14 p.m. We're meeting in person today at the Port of Seattle headquarters, Commission chambers, and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Deputy Clerk Payne, please call the roll for the commissioners in attendance.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins,
Here.
Commissioner Cho,
Present.
Commissioner Felleman,
Present.
Commissioner Hasagawa,
Present.
and Commissioner Mohammed.
Present.
Okay, everyone is present. Thank you.
Great. A few housekeeping items before we begin. For everyone in the meeting room, please turn your cell phones to silent. For anyone participating on Microsoft Teams, please mute your speakers when not actively speaking or presenting. Please keep your cameras off unless you are a commissioner or a member of the staff participating virtually and are actively addressing the commission. Members of the public addressing the commission during public comment may turn on their cameras when their names are called to speak, and will then turn them back off again at the conclusion of their remarks. For anyone at the dais today, please turn off your computers, speakers, and silence your devices. Please also remember to address your request to speak through the chair and wait to speak until you have been recognized. You'll turn your microphones on and off as needed. All these items here will ensure that we have a smoother meeting. Thank you all. All votes today will be taken by the roll call method or by general consent so that it is clear for anyone participating virtually how votes are casted. Commissioners will say aye or nay when their names are called. We are meeting on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people, with whom we share a commitment to steward these natural resources for future generation. This meeting is being digitally recorded and may be viewed or heard at any time on the Port's website and may be rebroadcasted by King County Television. Please now stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much. The first item of business today is approval of the agenda. As a reminder, if a commissioner wishes to make a general comment for or against an item on the consent agenda, it is not necessary to pull the item from the consent agenda. Rather, a commissioner may offer general supporting or opposing comments later in the meeting once we get to that part of the agenda. However, it is appropriate at this time if a commissioner wants to ask a question of staff or wishes to have a dialogue on a consent agenda item that you request that item to be pulled for a separate discussion. Commissioners, are there any items to pull from the consent agenda or any motions to rearrange today's meeting? Hearing none. Commissioners, the question is now on approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Great, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any objections to approval of the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Thank you. Our first order of business today is a special order item 4A, is approval of the 2025 slates of officers for the Port of Seattle Commission. Commissioners, order number 2025-01 is the election of commission officers for 2025. Before we do that, I'd like to take an opportunity to briefly reflect on 2024 as Commission President. It has truly been an honor to serve in this role and to serve the Port of Seattle Commission. I just want to take a moment to say what a humbling experience it was for me and how great it was to work with my colleagues, Executive Director Metric, and Port staff and our ELT members. We accomplished a lot together as a Port and as a Commission during the Port's 112 history year. We passed the $1 billion budget. We approved 14 commission orders and 13 resolutions in my role as president. I participated in over 50 community events and collaborated with our congressional leaders to advance things like our transformative policies, strengthen trade opportunities, and celebrate investments in critical infrastructure. It was an honor to do that. We also passed the first ever sound installation repair and replacement program. We also passed the Orca card and employee shuttle bus order for free Orca cards for all at Sea-Tac Airport, and I'm looking forward to that work continuing. We approved the groundbreaking order of making the Port of Seattle the first in the nation to independently mandate 100% of shore power capability for all cruise vessels home port in the Port of Seattle and requiring them to use it. That is work that we are all proud of, and we've done it together collectively. At a time when the world is still defined by economic and geopolitical uncertainty, the Port of Seattle still remains as a powerful economic driver for our region. And I know that this work will continue, and I trust the leadership of Commission President Toshiko Hasegawa stepping into this role, and I'm looking forward to supporting everything that you will do and accomplish and working alongside you. Again, thank you all for this honor to serve in this role. And with that said, I would like to ask Deputy Clerk Payne, please read the slate of officers into the record for us.
Actually, Aaron Pritchard, Chief of Staff, will read the slate of officers. But let me read the item into the record real quick. Item 4A, order number 2025-01, an order electing the slate of officers for the Port of Seattle Commission for calendar year 2025. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Aaron Pritchard, Chief Staff for the Commission. The Port of Seattle hereby elects the following slate of officers for 2025. All terms expire December 31st, 2025, pursuant to Commission bylaws. President Toshiko Hasegawa for the terms January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. She was previously appointed to this officer position through order number 2024-02 in January 2024. Vice President Ryan Calkins, January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, and Secretary Sam Cho, January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Pritchard, for that. Is there a motion and a second to adopt order number 2025-01?
So moved.
Seconded.
Great. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussions at this time, Commissioners?
Yes, ma'am.
President Commissioner Hasegawa.
I just wanted to take this moment to acknowledge your leadership. Outgoing President, Commissioner Mohammed. I think of all the tremendous accomplishments that you listed for last year. What stands out most to me is how you acted in the midst of a cyber attack that put operations to a standstill. You were postpartum. You had a newborn. You were juggling so much, and you were on leave, and yet you were the first phone call, making sure all of us were organized, that we were in the mix, staying informed about what's going on, and that we were leveraging our platforms as separately elected officials to communicate to the best of our ability to the public about what was going on. Thank you so much for never, ever missing a beat, for all that we've accomplished. Leadership matters. And so I have very, very big shoes to fill, and I'm just grateful that we have you here to make sure that we all continue doing this wonderful work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman.
I just would like to concur with those wonderful statements and to say what a great colleague she's been. Bringing us together as a commission is a challenge. We're 5 individuals that are part-time people, and to have somebody that is working together makes a difference. So thank you.
Commissioner Culkins.
I'll keep my remarks brief too, and also just to say thank you for an extraordinary year of leadership. I learned a lot from you in this year, and particularly that you keep the personal and the business. I really appreciate that in a position like this where it can really feel sometimes like you're under attack in that role, and but you do a very good job of separating that and also in making sure that you remember who's not at the table. You're always reminding us who else we need to be thinking about as decision makers. And incoming President Hasegawa, I'm really looking forward to this year. I think you and I have become friends as colleagues, and I really loved what your husband Michael had to say earlier today, that your North Star it's clear to all of us. It's rooted in a love for this institution, our community, and the people who make it up. And that just emanates from you as a leader. And so I look forward to learning a ton from you too.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to echo the sentiments of my colleague, President Emeritus Commissioner Hamdi Mohammed was a tremendous leader for us at the exact right time. We had some thorny issues this past year that I think we were able to navigate thanks to Commissioner Mohammed's, a connection to that community. And her willingness to have the difficult conversations. And so I do sincerely appreciate that we were able to navigate some tough issues this year. We were able to pass the PLA. We had to work with some of our taxi cab constituents. Commissioner Hasegawa mentioned the cybersecurity attack, and so it was nothing short of a eventful 2024, but you led us through it, so for that I'm really grateful. President Hasegawa, you and I go back years and years before you and I ever considered being in an elected office or any position of power. And I just got to say, personally, I'm just so proud to be sitting here next to you at the dais, but also just so proud of how you haven't changed since prior to your election to this port to this moment. You're the same person you were 8-9 years ago when I first met you to today. And I respect that, and I don't think people realize that it's hard to be up here. It's not easy. The constant criticism, the tension, the thorny issues we have to deal with. We realize we can't make everyone happy. It's very easy to be swayed by those who are louder in the room. But one thing that I will say is that Commissioner Hasegawa, and quite frankly, all of us here stand firm on our values and our principles here. And although we can't fix everything overnight, that we all row in the same direction, and we're trying to make this place better, and as Commissioner Hasegawa said in her remarks, build a port for the future. And so I'm really excited for 2025 under your leadership, Commissioner Hasegawa. I'm really excited for everything that we're going to do. And let me just say, I am so proud that for 3 years in a row, this institution has made history. We have 2 superwomen. I don't know how, and as a man, let me just speak, I don't know how you all gave birth and had this and had a full-time job at the same time. So can we just give a round of applause for these women here? So the port is in good hands, and I really sincerely appreciate both of you. But congratulations, Commissioner Hasegawa, President Hasegawa. Thank you.
Thank you all for those kind words. I appreciate you all so much. Hearing no further discussion, Deputy Clerk Payne, please call the roll for the vote. And commissioners, please say aye or nay when your names are called.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasegawa?
Yay.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. There are 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
All right, I will officially say the motion has passed Our slate of officers for 2025 is now adopted. Congratulations, Commission President Hasagawa, Commissioner Culkins, and Commissioner Cho. We will now pass the gavel. Give us a second.
And a moment of personal privilege. We also have a commemorative gavel that we wanted to share with Commissioner Mohammed as well.
Thank you. Another one? Commissioner Hasagawa, she's asking for another one. Oh, is that, oh, the nameplate's gonna switch. I'm gonna frame that. Thank you.
Okay. Passing of the gavel and all of the personal effects. Thank you. Okay. I wanted to note that President Mohammed made history as the first Black Muslim woman to hold office as president of the Port of Seattle, and so her gavel is etched and engraved with the year of her leadership.
Thank you.
Mine's a little crusty. And it's a tremendous honor to be here. And so, with that, are there any additional commissioner comments to begin the year? Next on our agenda is the executive director's report. But I think before I pass it to you, Steve, I will just take a moment of personal privilege, and I will say for myself, I am deeply grateful for this opportunity, and I've been joined today by 250 people from community, colleagues, former classmates, and my family who traveled in, some of them from out of state. And so if they could please, those who are in the room today, could you please stand and just be recognized? They're like, no, we're all introverts. Obrigada. Obrigada, gracias, e ohayou gozaimashita. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. And then you guys probably don't want to stay for the rest of this. See you later. Yeah. I'm just trying to look out. Okay, and with that, we'll pass it over to Executive Director Metric for his report.
Thank you, President Hasagawa. I won't take that personally then. President Hasagawa, congratulations to you, Vice President Conkins, Secretary Cho. I look forward to having a great year in 2025. But I also want to express my deep appreciation to Commissioner Mohammed for her leadership during 2024 and during a successful and challenging year of overcoming. And thank you for all the leadership they had in the partnership during that time. I thank you. So good afternoon, Commissioners. Here we are. Happy New Year. The first meeting of the year, and I hope everyone was able to relax, refresh, and recharge and get ready for 2025. I also want to thank everyone at the port who worked over the holidays, keeping our aviation and maritime gateways operating 24/7 during that time period and focusing on safety and efficiency as they did that. So, Commissioner, before we turn towards the work of 2025, I thought I'd take a moment to recognize some of our major achievements on the operational side of things and the capital side of things in 2024. Last year, the port managed record levels of demand at the airport and near record levels of demand at our seaport and in our cruise industry. At the airport, we welcomed 8 new international services in 2024, and we'll add 3 new services in 2025. We also opened 9 new dining and retail spaces. At the seaport, we greeted 1.7 million revenue passengers, counting them coming and going, and announced new services for 2025 and 2026. Operations means jobs, and that high volume expands economic activity in our region and the rippling effect throughout the economy. It was also a challenge to keep up with. I want to recognize our operational and maintenance teams who are always in build it while flying mode, and our first responders who keep our facilities safe and secure during sometimes very challenging circumstances. On the capital side, our teams topped off the Sea Concourse expansion at the very end of the year and hit major milestones for the SEA Gateway project in ticketing, which will be a transformational project when completed. We also broke ground on the new Maritime Innovation Center at Fisherman's Terminal and turned on 2 new shore power projects at Terminal 5 with the Northwest Seaport Alliance and Pier 66 for cruise. We launched new programs to support startups and small and medium enterprises and launched a new business accelerator program as well. The port kept advancing its sustainable leadership role as well, becoming one of the first airports in the country to transition away from the PFAS firefighting foam forever chemicals, adopting orders to require all cruise vessels homeported in Seattle to be shore power capable and to utilize shore power in the 2027 season. These are just some of the highlights from last year. And also with a $5.6 billion 5-year capital plan, an even bigger vision for how the port for the future supports economic activity and sustainability, 2025 will certainly be a pivotal year. We have already some milestones to celebrate in 2025. Last week, I'm really super excited about this. I welcomed our new Managing Director of Economic Development, Nipaporn A. Bongjukta, who joined us on January 6th. And 1 week into the job, A is already working hard to meeting people and learning about the port and all that we do. Last week, she joined me and other leaders in a meeting with the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub to discuss collaboration on decarbonization opportunities. It's exciting to be at the ground floor of the development of these markets, and I'm excited to have A on board to help us advance this work. I also joined many of you last week with Chairman Forsman and other leaders of the Suquamish Tribal Council to sign our first government-to-government memorandum of agreement on how the port and the tribe will work together on shared priorities. Several speakers at the event referred to this signing as the beginning of a great journey, and it certainly felt that way last week. It was an honor to reflect in the MOA the work by so many at the port that have begun these relationships and to represent the Port of Seattle in a formal documentation of our commitment. It was a great day. I look forward to seeing the outcomes of this collaboration as we move forward. January is National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and January 11th last week was Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And I was proud to join Commissioner Mohammed at the breakfast event recognizing our port team and partners who signed on to our pledge against anti-human trafficking. Against human trafficking, not against anti-human trafficking. I was deeply impressed by the commitment of our staff and proud to see port employees showcase their internal organizational efforts and our national leadership on this important issue. And thank you to everyone on the working group, especially those who recruited new signatories to our pledge, which included 2 new maritime signatories, and those that put together the employee recognition and awareness event. As our region prepares to host the FIFA World Cup in 2026, this effort is more important than ever, and the port is playing a national leadership role in spearheading anti-human trafficking messaging efforts. Finally, on Monday, upcoming January 20th, the nation will celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, the impact of his work and his legacy. The port will sponsor a table at the annual MLK Day Opportunity Fair at Garfield High School with support by staff from Human Resources, the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Workforce Development, and other departments. This opportunity fair at Garfield High Schools will allow HR and workforce development to promote career and job opportunities, as well as business opportunities for WIMBY firms at the Port of Seattle and in port-related industries. The port has been a strong supporter of this event for many years, so it's a highlight of the year for us. Moving to today's commission meeting, I'd like to highlight a few items. One highlight from a consent agenda is a request to replace fire suppression systems at our car rental facility. This action is key to our efforts to remove PFAS chemicals from our operation and is the next step there. Under staff reports and presentations, you'll hear our 2024 internal audit annual report, our public art program annual report, and our draft international policy agenda for the upcoming year. So with that, Commissioners, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Director Metrick. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the Executive? And we're now at committee reports. Erica Chung, Strategic Advisor, will provide the report. Erica.
Happy New Year. Madam President Hasegawa, Commissioners, Executive Director Metric, I have 2 committee reports for you from last year. On December 12, 2024, Commissioners Fellman and Cho convened the Sustainability, Environment, and Climate Committee, where they were briefed on the port's waterfront building energy efficiency and decarbonization efforts as part of the Maritime Climate Air Action Plan, which was adopted in 2021. Staff shared that there was a 65% reduction in Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions in 2023 from a 2025 baseline and a 55% reduction from 2022 levels. Staff then shared with commissioners the significant efforts currently underway to take a progressive approach to achieve the port's net zero goals, which includes gathering building data through energy audits, improving building efficiency, electrifying building systems to eliminate fossil natural gas use, and investing in renewable energy sources. Staff also provided an update on progress to develop and implement green lease terms. Finally, staff shared the 2025 priorities to advance the MCAP building and campus energy strategies, including measuring and improving resource efficiency to reduce cost and energy use across the port's waterfront building and facilities. On December 17th, Commissioners Hasegawa and Cho convened the Aviation Committee. Commissioners received an update on the Sea Concourse expansion, airport dining and retail process, and the selected proposals. In response to commissioners' questions, staff shared the selection criteria and overall process to vet and score proposals in a fair and equitable manner. Committee staff also presented a committee year in review. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Commissioners, do you have any follow-up questions for Erica regarding committees? Seeing none, the Port Commission will now welcome public comment as an important part of our public process. Comments are received and considered by the Commission in its deliberations. Before we take public comment, we're going to review our rules for in-person and virtual public comment. And so, Deputy Clerk, will you please play the recorded rules?
The Port of Seattle Commission welcomes you to our meeting today. As noted, public comment is an important part of the public process, and the Port of Seattle Commission thanks you for joining us. Before proceeding, we will overview the rules governing public comment for your general information. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak unless otherwise revised by the presiding officer for the purposes of meeting efficiency, and the speaker shall keep their remarks within the allotted time provided. A timer will appear on the screen, and a buzzer will sound at the end of the speaker's comment period. The Commission accepts comments on items appearing on its agenda and items related to the conduct of port business. The presiding officer will ask speakers to limit their comments to these topics. This rule applies to both introductory and concluding remarks. Disruptions of Commission public meetings are prohibited. General disruptions include, but are not limited to, the following: speaking before being recognized by the presiding officer, holding or placing banners and signs in the meeting room in a way that endangers others or obstructs the flow of people or view of others at the meeting, intentionally disrupting, disturbing, or otherwise impeding attendance or participation at a meeting, refusing to follow the direction of the presiding officer or security personnel, attempting to use the comment time for purposeful delay without conveying a discernible message, using the comment period to assist in a campaign for election of any person to any office or for the promotion of or opposition to any ballot proposition except when addressing action being taken by the Commission on a ballot proposition appearing on its agenda, directing public comments to the audience, engaging in abusive or harassing behavior, including but not limited to derogatory remarks based on age, race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, disability, pregnancy, sex, gender, sexual orientation, transgender status, marital status, or any other category protected by law, the use of obscene or profane language and gestures, assaults or other threatening behavior, and sexual misconduct or sexual harassment. For safety purposes, individuals are asked not to physically approach commissioners or staff at the meeting table during the meeting. Individuals may provide written public comment before or after the meeting, and in addition, speakers may offer written materials to the Commission clerk for distribution during their testimony to the Commission. A detailed list of the public comment rules is available through the Commission clerk. If a meeting is disrupted by an individual in attendance in the meeting room or by an individual providing public comment in person or virtually, the port will impose progressive consequences that may result in exclusion from future meetings. Written materials provided to the clerk will be included in today's meeting record. The clerk has a list of those prepared to speak. When your name is called, please come to the testimony table or unmute yourself if joining virtually. Repeat your name for the record and state your topic related to an item on the agenda or related to the conduct of port business. For those joining virtually, when you have concluded your remarks, please turn off your camera and mute your microphone. Our public comment period will now commence. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. So we were gonna, is there anybody who's signed up online? Yes. Okay, let's turn to online first. Would you read them into the record for me?
Let me pull up the timer. All right, on our virtual list, first we have Linda Wong. Linda Wong. Oh, go ahead.
Linda, please state your name and the item that you're referring to, and we'll go ahead and start the clock. Floor is yours.
My name is Linda Wong. I am representing the Sea-Tac Airport Community Coalition for Justice, and I'm reading, or I will be reading, a letter from all of us to inform you of our position to hopefully inform your vote on January 28th regarding the International Tourism Authorization item, the repurposing of the international marketing budget. Should I begin?
Yes.
On behalf of Sea-Tac Airport Community Coalition for Justice, thank you, President Toshiko Hasegawa and Port Commissioner Sam Cho, for your leadership in removing the proposed budget increase for international marketing from the consent agenda and asking that it be repurposed to assist aviation impacted local businesses, micro businesses, and business associations. We bring to you the voices of aviation impacted people of color, refugees and immigrants, and our neighbors near Sea-Tac Airport and under related flight paths. Funding international marketing and increasing said budget by 25% from $800,000 over 2 years to $1.5 million over 3 years, or $500,000 each year, adds health, environmental, and climate harms to over 419,000 aviation impacted residents living near the Sea-Tac Airport and under its related flight path. It, one, significantly contradicts the port's position that it is merely responding to the anticipated increase of passengers, the doubling of international flights, and the tripling of air cargo. Two, would accelerate the increase in international flights, and three, would surely add harm to our own and our families' health, environment, and climate. Sea-Tac Airport facilitates extensive aviation travel that harms our health, environment, and climate. We support President Hasegawa's and Port Commissioner Cho's call for repurposing the funds to benefit aviation-impacted businesses, micro-businesses, and business associations. We similarly ask 2024 Port Commission President Mohammed, 2024 Secretary Calkins, and Port Commissioner Feldman to call for and vote unanimously to repurpose the funds to assist aviation-impacted local businesses, micro-businesses, and business associations. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And I will just note for the record that it was President Mohammed who was presiding over that meeting and did pull that item for action at the last meeting. And then there were comments from all 5 commissioners with an excellent line of questioning on the purposing of those funds for that item. So we appreciate your input. We'll move on to our next speakers. Online, we have Stacy Oakes.
Good morning. My name is Stacy Oakes, and I'll also be speaking on the international tourism marketing. There are no cons, no negatives, no reasons listed not to spend money on international tourism marketing. How does the staff that prepared this presentation still have a job? Seriously. If this was a research project assigned to a 6th grader, do you think they would have done a more accurate job and included both pros and cons in their report? Enabling our elected commissioners to have a robust, honest discussion about whether marketing aimed at increasing flights and cruise sailings was actually in our best interest. Although I suppose those 6th graders could have been seen as having a conflict of interest, right? Because they watch us dooming them to a future so bleak, many have already decided that it would be cruel for them to bring a new generation of children into the world. Shh. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to list that as a con. We don't want to acknowledge that Seattle's cruise ships dump 4 billion gallons of toxic waste on their journey to Alaska each year. Not while Tahlequah carries another dead orca baby in a tour of grief. We don't want to put down in writing that marketing to increase flights and cruises increases greenhouse gas emissions, which is directly linked to the increasing frequency and severity of quote-unquote natural disasters. Not while we watch California burn in January, right? While the rising estimate of damage from that climbs towards $200 billion. We don't want to incriminate the port for lawsuits with local community members by acknowledging that increased flights mean increased asthma, cancer, heart disease, and premature death.
Oh,
but here's a news flash for you. You're not successfully conning the public. Pretending these harms don't exist doesn't actually make them any less real or less devastating. It just makes the Port of Seattle less credible and more complicit. Please do better.
Thank you, Stacy. Our next speaker will be Robin Briggs. Robin, go ahead, state your name and the item that you're speaking about, and we'll start the clock.
Hi. Hello, Port Commissioners. My name is Robin Briggs, and I'm a Seattle resident. I wanted to speak today on the proposed expenditures on tourism advertising. So thanks for listening to my comment. The whole point of tourism advertising, as I understand it, is to get more people to fly to Seattle. And I am concerned about the climate, and I think the port should be capping the greenhouse gas emissions from aviation and not expanding them. Emissions from aviation in Seattle are up 18% since 2008. Yay. Increasing the demand for flying, then increasing flights will grow these emissions further. However, there are other reasons beyond climate for skepticism about the efficacy of this proposed spending. The money spent on advertising is public money that is leaving our local economy. The plan is that more money will flow back in from increased tourism, but that is not a given. Airlines and cruise companies do their own advertising, and demand is very high already, which suggests that there will be a decreasing rate of return on dollars spent. So what are the alternatives? We could spend the money locally on things that we know will benefit us and invest in our local economy at the same time. We could spend the more on electrification of short-haul drayage, which has numerous benefits. We could spend more on noise mitigation for people living in the flight path. Improved insulation would reduce noise, reduce energy bills, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions all at once. All of these alternative uses for the money seem like they will have positive impacts that we can measure, unlike money spent on tourism demand. Please consider more beneficial spending options. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. And our next speaker is Joe Kunstler. Joe, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Commish?
Yep, go ahead, state your name and the item that you're going to be talking about. We'll start the clock.
Thank you, Commish. Joe Kunstler here. Just a few general thoughts on the business of the airport and also how meetings are managed at the Port Commission. First, I'm going to say this very delicately. I don't want to be negative, overly, I don't want to address commenters per se, but I really think all this garbage about aviation emissions is overblown. It's only 7% of total emissions. This airport and frankly, this Port Commission have bent over backwards to try to reduce emissions from having shore power, to encouraging transit use, to trying to get airplanes to fly quieter and use SAF or synthetic aviation fuels, like from corn stalks and waste food products that would otherwise just be disposed of. Also there's electric jet fuel that's being created by electricity. There's a lot of options to reduce emissions. I think reducing travel is not one that the majority of the public's going to support. And all of you have elections coming up. So there's that. With that, I have a family emergency to tend to. My mother broke her foot yesterday, so I'm sorry I couldn't make your reception. Hope you understand I need to be here at home today. And with that, I just ask that the new Port Commission, enforce the Port Commission rules. They were used somewhat at my urging as a model for Redmond City Council last year in the wake of a frequent flyer who's maliciously disruptive. I do want to give you back some of your time and thank you for your awesome public service and look forward to flying out of Seattle Airport soon to places all around the country and hopefully soon the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We always appreciate the constructive feedback. I did also want to flag that derogatory comments towards staff are prohibited per the commission rules. And so, Stacy, we just wanted to let you know that in the future you should direct your comments towards the commission and refrain from making derogatory comments about staff specifically. Thank you. We're going to move to folks in the room, and first we have Patrick McKee. Welcome to the front.
Yeah, hi, my name's Pat McKee, and I want to talk about the international marketing budget in a non-derogatory way. I just want to start by telling you about my friends Colleen and Daryl. I guess I've known them 39 years. My wife and Colleen pushed baby girls and strollers up the hills of Silver Lake together. 5 years ago, they retired to Altadena, where they restored the sweet 1933 home they watched explode in flames Wednesday morning as their neighborhood burned with no fire engines in sight. Thankfully, they're safe, as I hope your friends and family in LA are. But across Southern California, dozens of people are dead and thousands of families are homeless, and still ongoing citywide wildfires the incoming administration is blaming on environmentalists and DEI, in which even credible voices want to attribute to drought and high winds interacting in some kind of unpredictable perfect storm. To your credit, each of you knows better. The storm was entirely predictable. 2024 was the hottest year on record, as was the year before that and the year before that. A heating climate caused that drought and those abnormally high winds. What's heating our climate are hydrocarbons in the atmosphere from burning fossil fuels. Certainly in LA today, it's an emergency. It's not even the new normal. It's going to keep getting hotter and hotter in Los Angeles and Seattle and Alaska as long as greenhouse gas emissions increase. And they're increasing around the world and they're increasing here at home. Meanwhile, we're hearing conversations around whether the port should budget $400,000 or $500,000 a year to promote international tourism, to add additional flights through Sea-Tac, to boost demand for Alaska cruise, to increase carbon emissions even more. I know it's part of your job, but you need to appreciate how insane this sounds. Where does it end? Who'll be the first commissioner to say, no, stop, it's a crisis, let's reconsider, let's draw down demand, let's discourage unnecessary air travel, reduce crews, call for and consult on regional transit alternatives, preserve people's livelihoods, but for God's sake, we've got to cut carbon. Instead of urgency, there's this palpable solicitude for corporate comfort levels, holding out for some imaginary win-win future, but every day of delay is already contributing to further unimaginable loss right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'd like to welcome Peggy Prince from Seattle Cruise Control. Peggy, go ahead, say your name, the item you'll be speaking on.
All right. Yes, good afternoon. I'm Peggy Prince, and I'm speaking also on the international marketing. Members of my group, Seattle Cruise Control, will appreciate your no vote on the proposal to spend $1.5 million increasing international tourism marketing by 20%, encouraging even more visitors to fly to Seattle and board cruise ships. We thank you for dedicating extra time and deliberation to this important issue, international outreach. You obviously understand why this publicity, and especially additional publicity, is controversial. It's an example of your policies and your practice contradicting each other. On the one hand, you pledge to reduce carbon emissions with various goals and timelines for various sectors of your enterprise. On the other hand, you are promoting more greenhouse gas emitting aviation and cruise traffic at a crucial time in the climate crisis. And you probably know that tourism is responsible for 8% of global emissions. And if you missed it, today's New York Times has this ominous chart about the heat increases because the world broke the 1.5 degrees Celsius barrier of heat, global temperature rise last year. So you at the Port of Seattle can have great influence. You can put your purchasing power to better use. Rather than attracting overseas visitors, you can spend your dollars in Western Washington or not at all. And while you're at it, instead of growing cruise, how about reducing it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. And next we have Iris Ottman from Seattle Cruise Control.
Good afternoon, it's Iris Antman.
Thank you.
Yeah. My name is Iris Antman. I'm a member of Seattle Cruise Control, and I'm here to talk about the harms of cruise. Always the port responds with the economic importance of the cruise business and the jobs it provides. The port has yet to cost out the harms to the health of people and animals, plants and crops, to the air, water, and climate. And so the economic comparison has not been made. Shore power and the promise of a green cruise corridor never will be enough to significantly curb CO2 emissions, the primary cause of these harms. And now you're considering increasing the port's advertising budget to attract more tourists flying here and cruising to Alaska, as if the fires in Los Angeles weren't happening or that they're not a result of global heating. Searing temperatures on June 28, 2021, crumbled streets in Seattle, caused baby birds to jump to their deaths across the region, killed billions of sea creatures along the coastlines, and cost Washington state about 1/5 of its cherry crop. This heat wave, according to some experts, was virtually impossible if not for the impacts of climate change. Our actions and habits are destroying parts of the web of life on which we depend. It makes no sense to continue to ignore what is so painfully obvious. We all have our parts to play in facing these realities. When I drive my gas car rather than take public transit, that's not helpful, but it has a small impact. When oil and gas companies lie to us about the impact of their products, it has a huge impact. When the Port of Seattle continues to support and grow the cruise business, it has a significant impact. When you reflect on your life, are you going to feel that you did all you could to make the world for your grandchildren a better place? We must wake up from the spell we're under, that our current system is inevitable.
Thank you.
If we don't, we're fast walking to the destruction of our environment and therefore ourselves. Thank you.
Next, we have Matt Ventosa from ILWU Local 19. Come on up, Matt. I'll let you introduce yourself and the item that you're speaking to.
Thank you. My name is Matt Ventosa. I'm the Vice President of the International Longshore Warehouse Union Local 19 in Seattle. Good afternoon, Executive Director, Commissioners, and congratulations, Commissioner Hasegawa, on your title as the President of the Commission. I want to thank the Port for their past support of preserving industrial lands and want to talk about the most recent attack on those lands. We have spoken about this in the past, and our position has not changed. The preservation of the industrial lands supports living wage jobs for decades, not just 1 or 2 years while stuff is being built. It is vital to keep these lands intact to move freight, including agricultural products, and provide jobs associated with these lands, both by land, sea, locally, and globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Next, I'd like to welcome Ron Manuel from ILWU Local 19. Ron, go ahead, introduce yourself, the item you're going to speak to. The floor is yours.
Thank you, President Hasegawa. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Ron Manuel. I'm a ILWU Local 19 Labor Relations Representative. I've worked on the ports for 37 years. I want to thank the Commissioners and staff for being leaders in promoting shore power at the cruise ships and also in the container terminals. The Port of Seattle is an economic engine. The job of the Port of Seattle, the Northwest Seaport Alliance, is to create jobs. That is their primary function. The Port of Seattle, in support of the cruise ships that call at the Port of Seattle, they provide thousands of jobs and millions in tax revenue. It pays for needed public services. The cruise industry purchases millions of dollars worth of food and other goods from local farmers and suppliers, keeping them busy, keeping their employees busy. They provide thousands of other ancillary jobs in the community. Trucking, transportation, and others. So, you know, on the cruise, on a personal note, I've loaded and unloaded those operating cranes. I get a particular joy in watching the little children as they go on their cruise with their family. They're on the balconies, they're looking out the portholes as they watch the longshore workforce load and unload their food and luggage for the trip that they've planned for perhaps years for some of the families. It is an amazing thing watching that and seeing people come to this city and enjoy what the city has built, the port has built, and it provides tremendous work for the people that are here in the community. I thank the commissioners for your work on that. I look forward to cruise continued and expansion into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And next, I'd like to welcome up Carlin Smith, ILWU Local 19. Introduce yourself, speak your item for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for your time, Commissioners. My name is Carlin Smith. I'm a rank and file member of ILWU Local 19. I'm here to ask you to do all you can to support industrial lands in the area immediately surrounding the Port of Seattle. The free flow of cargo in and out of the Port of Seattle is very important to the communities that surround us, and the more congestion there is down there, the more CO2 emissions there's going to be. The more congestion there is down there, the more chance of pedestrians, being impacted by industrial traffic. These things don't mix, and I urge you to use all of your influence to keep the industrial lands industrial.
Thank you. And that concludes all of our signups for today. Do we have anybody else in the room who would like to speak that did not sign up in advance? Do we have anybody online who did not sign up in advance that would like to speak? Seeing none at this time, can I look to the Deputy Clerk to please give a synopsis of the written comments received?
Thank you. Madam Commission President, members of the Commission, and Executive Director Metric. We have received 15 written comments for today's meeting. These have been previously distributed to you and will become a part of the meeting record today. 14 written comments have been received asking the Commission to not approve the International Tourism Marketing Agreement postponed from the December 10th Commission meeting, and to decrease carbon emissions and protect the environment. These are from Barry Geinklid, Jared Whitney Howe, Jordan Van Vos, Laureen France, Laura Gomiro, Matt Kolinsky, Leo Kuchwitz, Patrick McKee, Jason Lee, Veronica Ruffin, Jacoba Tate, Angeline Zalbin, and Lucinda Stroud. And from Linda Wong, who submitted spoken on behalf of the Sea-Tac Airport Community Coalition for Justice, as well as Maria Batola, Chair of the Beacon Hill Council, Estela Ortega of El Centro de la Raza, Vilma Valoria of the King County International Airport Community Coalition, and Brandon Bowersox Johnson and Dr. Laura Gibbons from the 350 Aviation Seattle. One written comment was also received from Ann Craker asking to remove advertisements for increased international travel from item 11B, the draft 2025 International Policy Agenda Briefing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So at this time, we will move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be adopted by one motion. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered separately immediately after adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda covering item 8A through F.
So moved.
Second. The motion has been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Mohammed. Do we have any objections? Any comments? Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your name is called for the approval of consent agenda. We're going to call the roll on this one.
Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
Thank you. There are 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
Excellent, the motion passes. Okay, and then moving on in the agenda, we have 4 new business items. Will the clerk please read the first item into the record, and Executive Director Metrick will then introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 10A, resolution number 3832, introduction and adoption of a resolution authorizing the executive director to sell and convey port personal property in 2025 in accordance with RCW 5308-090 with a value not greater than $22,830 and repealing resolution number 3816 dealing with the same subject.
Commissioners, this is an annual authorization to sell and convey port personal property. In the past, staff conducted outreach to local jurisdictions to provide items such as surplus mobility devices to local disadvantaged communities, as well as bicycles originally used to patrol Seattle-Tacoma International Airport to Rainier Beach High School's Bike Works program. This action enables conveyance of property in 2025 and updates the amount to reflect what's outlined in the RCW. We're requesting consolidation of this reading to facilitate adoption on the same day. Our presenter this afternoon is Lisa Lamb, Director, Accounting, Financial Reporting, and Port Auditor. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and good afternoon, Executive Director Metric. My name is Lisa Lam. I'm the Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting. I'm here to introduce and request your approval for Resolution number 3832. This resolution authorizes our Executive Director to sell and convey port personal property in 2025 with the established threshold in pursuant of the state law RCW. This also repeals Resolution 3816. The port regularly identified personal property that's no longer in use that needed for surplus. This resolution will allow our Executive Director to surplus personal property with a fair value with its established value by the state law, $22,830. Any item in value exceeding this threshold will continue requesting Commissioner for authorization and approval when that comes to attention and require for authorization. It's part of their commission agenda. If any item sale of surplus property approved by our Executive Director and his delegates within this threshold, it will be included in the monthly notification of prior Executive Director delegation actions. So for your awareness. This dollar threshold was established by the RCW as amended in July 2023 with a base year threshold of $22,000. Since then, according to the RCW, this threshold is now updated by the Washington State Department of Revenue annually based on the consumer pricing index in the Seattle-Tacoma Bellevue area. So the latest threshold is updated, calculated on December 1st, is $22,830, so it's increased by $830. In the past, the surplus dollar value within this threshold has been well used, and the asset item is reaching mostly of the end of useful life. The port average out on about $25,000 annually surplusing equipment and furniture, and about $12,500 annually on computer and mobility device. Rolling stock and vehicle averaging about $6,000 to $10,000 per vehicle, accumulated to about $150,000 a year surplus value. And that's the end of the presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Commissioner, since this is a routine annual item, there's a request to consolidate readings of the resolution to allow for adoption on the same day as introduction. Is there any objection to the request to consolidate resolution readings? Hearing none, is there a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 3832?
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Fellman. Commissioners, is there any discussion? Questions? Commissioner Fellman.
I just can't vote on this thing without thinking about Rudy Calusa's heartfelt presentation about this and how important it was to him to receive things like this. So I am more than proud to support it in his recognition and his name.
Commissioner Calkins. All right, seeing no further comments, will the clerk please call the roll for the vote? And commissioners will say aye or nay.
Thank you, Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
And Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. There are 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
Wonderful, the motion carries. Thank you very much for the presentation. Will the clerk please read the next item into the record? The Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 10B, resolution number 3833, introduction of a resolution establishing a revised code of ethics for port commissioners and repealing resolution number 3681 as amended, and making a corresponding amendment to the Commission's Governance Committee Charter scope of work to include jurisdictional review of the written complaints alleging behavioral standards violations of commissioners, when such complaints are unaccompanied by a formal ethics complaint filing.
Commissioners, this review of the Commission Code of Ethics resulted in changes intended to improve clarity on conflicts of interest, expectations for respectful interactions, complaint process improvements, advisory opinions, opinions, and many more. The resolution addresses gaps in the current code and reflects our commitment to ethical behavior. And I'll turn it over to Commission Chief of Staff Aaron Pritchard for further comments. And I see Jessica Nettleman's joined us from the legal team as well. So,
thank you, Executive Director Metric and Commissioners. You'll notice that Michelle Hart is not here today. She's flown to Florida late last night to take care of her father, so our thoughts are with her. She carried us on this. She is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to words on paper, and really has delivered us, I think, a product that's close enough to a work of art as you can get. Not without the help of our other artist here, Jessica Nadelman, who did just a ton of research. I think this is going to be a great model for other jurisdictions seeking to figure out how to balance these. And as the biggest port, in our state, all eyes are on us, and so we have a higher level of responsibility. And so I'm really pleased to bring this forward, and we'll turn it over to Jessica to walk us through the slides.
Thank you, Aaron. Am I mic'd here? Yes? No? Button. There we go. Okay. Hi, Commission. Thanks for having us. Just a minor disclaimer that, as Aaron said, Michelle had planned to do this presentation, so I'm going to do the best I can. These are her slides, so just excuse any hiccups here. So here we go. So we are here to present proposed amendments to the Code of Ethics. Next slide. And as Aaron mentioned, we had a team working on this, including myself, Aaron, Michelle Hart, Pete Ramels, our general counsel, and Elizabeth Black had done some work on this in the past as well. So team effort. Next slide. The code was last revised in May of 2013, so it was due to be revised. The work started on this in 2021 and sort of stopped and started for a while. It was a fairly complicated undertaking. Next slide. So the bulk of it happened in end of 2023 through present. And it's almost a complete rewrite, as you will have seen from the red line version. And it incorporates, trying to be consistent with state law and a number of other policy decisions that we expressed in the new code. Next slide. So, as I said, very thorough review of all of the sections of it, some new sections put in that I'll discuss in a moment. Lots of work to just make language consistent and clear. We took our draft to review to Commission's counsel. We worked with General Counsel, we worked with the Board of Ethics, and we worked with the Governance Committee to review the draft and incorporated their feedback, and as Aaron said, have come up with a really good model. I was going to say a masterpiece, but I don't know if it's a masterpiece, but it's a good model. Next slide. So the new draft aligns more closely with state statute. And it also addresses the behavioral commitments that Commission made in the amendments to the bylaws that occurred in January last year. It adds language to harmonize the bylaws and the code of conduct. Next slide. So there are, all of the sections had significant cleanup in terms of language and consistency. It has a few sections that I wanted to point out here that are new or thoroughly revised. One is a new section regarding service on nonprofit boards to help clarify how commissioners can serve on nonprofit boards and where the conflicts of interest arise there. We completely redid the section on how the Board of Ethics functions to better reflect clearly what their role is, what the process and procedure is, for making complaints, for investigating complaints, and for taking action on those complaints. Next slide. We added a new section regarding how complaints of the behavioral commitments from the bylaws would be managed, and they are going to be managed by the governance committee. So complaints regarding those bylaws commitments will go to the governance committee. There's a section that outlines how they will manage those, review, investigate, and act on those complaints. And again, did a number of cleanups, definitions. Next slide. So the timeline is introduction today. We'll ask that the resolution be adopted in 2 weeks on the 28th. And this resolution also includes some changes to the governance committee charter, which needs to be changed to align with the new responsibilities of the governance committee. And we're also making changes to the bylaws, which I will talk about next. And that is the end of my presentation, so questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. To my colleagues, I'll turn to you all for questions and comments at this time. I'm reading their body language. We had a very robust briefing ahead of this where we got to ask questions, and I also don't have any. So at this time, if there's nothing from my colleagues, is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. The motion has been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Mohammed, and I'd turn to the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
Thank you very much. The motion carries. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can, oh, okay.
I'm on the next item.
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm
I
just
didn't
gonna
realize
hang
that.
out.
I will turn to to the clerk to introduce the next item and Executive Director Metric to introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 10C, resolution number 3834, introduction of a resolution amending resolution number 3817 amended, and prior corresponding enacting and amending resolutions through incorporation pertaining to the Commission's bylaws and rules of procedure policy directive.
Commissioners, our bylaws state that the Commission shall refer the bylaws to an appropriate committee for review and recommendation for revisions at least once every 3 years. This most recent review resulted in revisions to governance practices around officers and rules of order, as well as a few technical edits. And I think it's going to turn to Jessica, since Michelle Hart, the Commission Clerk, is not here. We're going to turn to Jessica Nadelman, the Senior Port Counsel, to discuss these proposed changes.
Thank you. Yes, thank you again, Commission President and Commissioners, for having us here. Jessica Nadelman, Senior Port Counsel. Again, a set of slides that Michelle put together, but I'm going to do my best here. So we are here to discuss amendments to the bylaws, resulting in part from the amendments to the Code of Ethics, but also some other updates that we made that I will get into. Next slide. So same project team worked on these, Aaron Pritchard, myself, Michelle Hart, and Pete Rambles. Next slide. As Executive Director Metric said, we are required to review every 3 years. The bylaws were reviewed last January with significant updates, and we're doing it again now, again, to stay aligned with other changes in the law and other changes in our ethics code. Next slide. So the primary changes that we're making here are adding some language to reflect how the governance committees has a role in enforcing or investigating or managing the complaints related to the behavioral standards that are in the bylaws and now incorporated into the Code of Ethics. Also addressing some inaccurate, I guess, misleading language that was in the code regarding being able to remove a commissioner from their position or from their elected position. We've clarified that to mean just their role on the commission. Next slide. Again, so the change recognizes the new scope for the governance committee to manage these behavioral commitment complaints. It addresses and aligns the bylaws with the provisions of the code that talk about participation on nonprofit boards and the remote interest provision and where the ethical lines are drawn around participation on nonprofit boards. Next slide. We made some changes to align with changes that occurred last year in state law around how vacancies in elected office are filled. So our bylaws have now been updated to align with that state law. And we made an administrative change to reflect that strategic advisors in the commission office report both to their assigned commissioner and to the commission chief of staff. Next slide. We made some amendments to the rules to clarify our practice, actually, with adding some information about how we describe voting, how we act upon voting in a remote interest situation. We made an amendment reflecting how we manage approving interlocal agreements. And we made a change to make it clear that warnings for disruptions can happen either orally at the time of a meeting or written notice post-meeting. Next slide. So introducing the resolution today, next step is adoption of the resolution on January 28th. And I will take any questions that anyone has on this one.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this time? No comments? We're going to get out of here early. Is that a motion to waive the first reading?
You can. I can speak to it if you'd like.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner President Hasagawa. Well, if there's no questions, Commissioners, we could save time by waiving the first reading.
All I
Just
need is the
adopt it.
motion.
I move to amend this from an introduction to amend it for an actual adoption. Adopting.
A motion to waive the first reading and move to adopt.
Exactly.
So the commissioner has made a motion to waive the first reading and adopt the resolution as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
And the motion has been seconded by Commissioner Calkins. Is there any comments or questions by my colleagues? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
Thank you very much. The motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. That's some tricky footwork right there. All right, well, now I lost my place. I will look to the clerk to introduce the next item and ask Executive Director Metric to introduce it. Thank you.
Yes, 1 second.
Yes. There, I found it.
Item 10D, order number 2025-02, in order to develop a port-wide policy on plain language for the Port of Seattle.
Commissioners, as you take up this item, I want to advise that I've been briefed on the elements of this order and by the staff prepared to implement this work. I want to let you know that I support the direction of the Commission in its intent in this regard and appreciate the efforts by Commission President Hasegawa to bring this order forward. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Commission Strategic Advisor Francis Cho, who will present the order.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President, Commissioners, and Executive Director Metric. My name is Francis Cho, Commission Strategic Advisor. I am pleased to introduce Order Number 2025-02, a proposal to develop a port-wide policy on plain language for the Port of Seattle. The goal of the plain language policy is to establish a port-wide policy that prioritizes clarity, simplicity, and accessibility of public-facing documents for the benefit of the public. The end deliverable is to develop standards for the port to implement no later than March 31st. This order seeks to build on and expand upon Order 2023-05, which the Port Commission adopted in April 2023 and directed the Executive Director to develop a port-wide policy on language access. The federal and state governments, numerous private entities, educational institutions, and nonprofit organizations have enacted plain language policies to ensure the public can access information without unnecessary barriers and promote transparency and effective communication. The Port's Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and Communications and Marketing teams were consulted in developing this order. With that, I'll yield to Commission Chief of Staff Pritchard for any additional remarks or turn it over back to Commission President.
No comments, other than thank you, Francis.
Thank you very much, Francis, for that presentation and explanation. Commissioners, I'm going to first look for a motion and a second to adopt Order Number 2025-02.
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Mohammed and seconded by Commissioner Felleman. And with that, I will turn to my colleagues first for comments or questions that they have on this order. I will just say that the intent of this order is to make sure that all of the external facing communications from the Port of Seattle are accessible, particularly with the Sustainable Airport Master Plan process in full effect. We want to make sure that we are effectively and plainly communicating all of our materials to the broad audience. We'll also add that this should complement the language access order that was championed by Commissioner Mohammed 2 years ago, because plain language is easier to translate. My only question for you, staff, is what are the timelines for simplification of materials?
So currently, the order does have a deadline of March 31st, which is to develop standards for the port.
And then I'm also wondering since the cyber attack and how that brought down our entire webpage, how does that impact our implementation plan? Will we be able to go live?
I will like to yield to Director Grislow for that.
Welcome, Director Grislow.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioner President, Commissioners. Chris Grislow, Director of Communications and Marketing. We're in the space now with the website back where we are able to implement the goals of the order for both key documents that are available now, as well as giving us a playbook to move forward as described in the order.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd just like to commend staff for their swift action on this. And with that, I will turn to my colleagues for the roll. If the clerk will go ahead and call it.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasegawa?
Oh, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman?
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. That's 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
Wonderful. The motion carries. Thank you very much, staff. We're now at presentations and staff reports. Will the clerk please read the next item into the record, and Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 11A, 2024 International Audit Annual Report.
Commissioners, internal audit provides an important public service in ensuring the efficiency, compliance, and transparency of port operations. We're all deeply grateful to the internal audit team as well as to the Commission Audit Committee that sets the agenda for their work. Today's presentation is mainly a recap of last year's work and findings. In addition, many of the recommendations from the internal audit are already being implemented or underway. And the presenter this afternoon is Glenn Fernandez, Director of Internal Audit.
Welcome, Director Fernandez. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Steve. Next slide, please, Aubrey. So first, I want to thank the Audit Committee. Commissioner Hasegawa was the Audit Committee Chair. Commissioner Calkins was the other member. Sarah Holmstrom was another Audit Committee member, a volunteer member, actually. And we had substitutes, Commissioner Mohammed and Commissioner Fellman during the year, so thank you to them too. Next slide, please. So the first thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about our charter, because without our charter, which is passed to us by the Commission and the Audit Committee, we're unable to do our work. We derive our authority from the Commission, from you, and we do audits of just about everything the port touches, all programs, functions, systems, contracts, and activities. And in alignment with industry standard and best practice, we're a dual report, or at least I am a dual report who reports functionally to the Audit Committee and to Steve Metrick as well, administratively. Next slide, please. So a couple other things. In order to do our work, we have to have access to all the information at the port. So our charter, which is approved by, like I said, by the Commission, is to have full, free, and unrestricted access to port records and information in order to complete our work. And that's essentially what the slide says. Next slide, please. Another thing, not only do we need access to items, but we also need freedom to go out to set our schedules, our frequencies, our audit subjects through risk assessments, and get other people in the port to help out where necessary, and then report on it and be transparent, which we do and which we're doing today. And we also publish everything on our website. So our external-facing website has all of our audit reports for the public, so that's transparent. And we follow up on open issues and make sure that they're resolved and they're addressed. Next slide, please. So this is a globally recognized model, but the governing body is the Commission in this. Management are the first and second lines of defense. They essentially mean the first lines are the people that do the work and the people that supervise them or oversee their work. In some cases also, the second line would also cover internal checks and perhaps the legal department as well. And then internal audit, which is an independent function, is the last line of defense. We work both with management and the Commission, and it's almost like the catcher in the outfield that has to catch things before they get out to the media, to the external auditors and state auditors. So before external assurance providers. So we try to mitigate as much risk as possible. And we all work together and break down silos as needed. Next slide, please. So in 2024, we completed 16 audits. This pretty much talks a little bit about the types of audits we do: performance audits, capital audits, information technology, and contract compliance. Limited contract compliance are concessionaires at the airport that self-report their income to the port. We had also identified through our audits some high-risk issues, medium risk, and low-risk issues, and they're noted here. We perform continuous audits of construction projects that are GCCM type or general contractor construction management type projects, and the state law requires us to continuously audit these, so we do that. And as I mentioned earlier, our reports are shared with both the committee members and with the external facing website, and placed on the external facing website. Next slide, please. Great. So this is a quick Gantt chart of what we accomplished in 2024. Essentially everything green we completed. Because of some staffing issues and the cyber event, we missed a couple IT audits, but we did complete a couple extra other operational audits that are noted in here, also in the footnotes. Next slide, please. Some highlights from our audits, Commissioners. On our performance audits, we completed 6 of those. And some of the highlights, as Steve talked about, PFAS was a big item. We looked at PFAS. There's an opportunity still at tenant locations that is being addressed, primarily Delta hangar, Alaska hangar, and the PACCAR hangar. The rental car facility was brought up earlier today as being addressed. Managing overtime when excessive, that was something that came out of our audits. When you have about 20-plus hours of hours in a day, or over 24 hours in some cases of work, it's not only a financial issue, but a safety issue that needs to be managed. Leak detection. We need better leak detection systems at both maritime and aviation, because when we do have a leak, it occasionally takes a long time to find, and we're the largest consumer, or the second largest consumer of water in the region. We could very easily be the largest consumer of water if we don't detect these leaks in a timely manner. The last major leak took 15 months to detect and resolve, so that's quite a bit of time before they can plug those leaks, and lost 150 million gallons of water. Opportunities to improve controls at small organizations. Our small organizations are always targeted, and they're vulnerable, so working with them to improve controls is important. Next slide, please. And Commissioner, if you have questions, feel free to stop me at any time.
Actually, we're going to let you run through, and then
Okay.
we'll do questions at the end.
Very good.
We're running 40 minutes ahead of time, so we're not going to ruin a good thing now.
Okay. So our capital construction audits, we audited about $152 million of capital spend. So the projects that we audited essentially had $152 million of spend. Some of the key observations that we noted, not only good things, but not only bad things, but opportunities that were good as well, or things that we saw that were good. The closeout process, essentially at an end of an audit, all these bills come in, and you've got to reconcile everything and close it out. And the port does have a pretty robust process there. So it's evolved and improved over the years. So, that's a positive story. We're doing a lot of tenant reimbursement agreements. That's where Delta or Alaska does the work, and we reimburse them. And there, because it's picking up and it's becoming so large, there's an opportunity to improve processes and improve your controls, so we don't have unallowable or duplicate costs. For pay applications, this is when a contractor submits a big invoice to us, and we want to make sure that we do a better job of making sure there's supporting documentation for everything that's submitted, everything material. Risk management. Insurance is huge. We're required to have insurance in all our projects, but sometimes you can pay too much for insurance. And if there isn't good coordination between risk management and construction management and the contractor, sometimes you can overpay for insurance, and it could very easily be $500,000. So it's very large numbers. We look, like I said, we're 7 general contractor construction management projects were under audit on a continuous audit basis, and the estimated spend on those is about $1.5 billion over the life of the project. So there's a lot of big projects that we're continuously looking at. Next slide, please, Aubrey. On the IT side, we completed one audit in 2024, and the focus there was on improving and enhancing cybersecurity controls. We discussed these in non-public sessions, so I won't go into a lot of detail on this. Next slide, please, Aubrey. And finally, Commissioners, our 2025 audit strategy. It's to essentially stay independent and objective, because that's really a foundation of an internal audit function. Cyber incident recovery, we're still recovering from that, and there's a lot of data and information that people have to put back into systems from when the systems were down. So part of our work is to making sure that the work that was being done outside the systems is correctly put in. Community initiatives, smaller organizations, helping them out and helping them enhance their controls. Closed network systems on the IT side. We've got a lot of critical systems that are, when we say closed network, they're not connected to the outside internet, but still they're IT systems that are important. That, they run the STS trains, they run the runway lights and other critical infrastructure. So making sure that those are well protected. We'll continue to focus on capital delivery because of the amount of money we spend, and comply and continue to do the RCW audits. One last thing that I note is we have this internal audit outreach program where we're actively presenting to small businesses and grant recipients and talking a little bit about controls that, they're targeted so heavily, and their controls are still relatively, because they're smaller organizations, they don't have the resources that a big organization has. So, as Commissioner Mohammed had during our time on the audit committee, kind of pushed this, we've got a program now that we've built, and we're actively working on to train these small businesses and present to them and make sure that they have these resources available. And with that, I conclude my presentation, so I will take questions.
Thank you very much, Director Fernandez. I'll turn to my colleagues to see what questions or comments that they may have. Commissioner Fellman. Sorry. All right, Commissioner Calkins is an audit committee member.
Yeah, no, I just want to say it's been a pleasure to work with you again this past year, and I look forward to the coming year. This is one of the, if not the most important committee that we all get to participate in on occasion. And aside from being an essential oversight function for the commission, it's also a great way to learn about elements of a, 2,700 person organization that we may not in our day-to-day have the opportunity to learn about. And so I really do just appreciate the education I get sitting on the audit committee. And furthermore, I think we're really at a time where these functions are critically important because we are, in some areas of our organization, under intense pressure to grow. And that can, and so while, resources are always scarce, we are trying to balance the demands of schedule and budget, and always pushing to deliver as quickly as we can on these high demand projects. And so it's just good to have a bit of a referee there to make sure that we are sticking by our highest order values. So appreciate all your work, Glenn, and
thank you,
looking forward to
Commissioner.
next year.
Commissioner Fellman.
Thank you, Glenn, and as you know, we're very much appreciative of all the work it takes to dig into these things. It's a level of detail that I'm glad I'm spared, but appreciate having it brought before us. I was just wanting to know a little bit more about the community initiatives and the sort of things that that might entail. And I know that the accounting for grants and things like this is sometimes a challenge for small organizations, but what are some of the specifics that you're talking about?
So the risks with, we have a lot of community initiatives like the South King County Fund. And, there's two elements. One, there's the cyber element, right? So in the past, we had the ACH fraud where bad actors take over their systems and use that maliciously to change banking information or whatever else, so those monies are redirected. So helping them not fall for phishing schemes or having robust systems, that's one element. And two, internally, there's some basic controls that an organization should have, such as segregation of duties and and bank reconciliations, and things that would help them catch fraud quicker. So if their money is going sideways, and they're good at running their charities, but if things are happening within their organization that they need to be aware of, they need to catch it quicker so they can stop it rather than letting it, impact their organization badly.
So,
Does that?
So would we condition our support for organizations based on their having controls in place, or how would they know we would be able to provide this consultative service?
One of the things we're doing is we're partnering with the OEDI function, with Bukta's team, and they have all the small organizations come in on a periodic basis. So our intent is to give them 15-minute presentations in front of, and talk a little bit about ourselves, what we have, and then guide them to our website where they have resources, and if they need additional help, to have them reach out to us.
So that's their visibility. Thank you.
Commissioner Mohammed.
Thank you, Commission President Hasagawa. Well, Glenn, I love the audit committee. It's one of my favorite committees. I didn't get to serve on it this last year, but I did appreciate being briefed on a number of issues that you all look at. And also there's the executive session piece where you guys talk about IT concerns and so forth. And I imagine you guys are having deeper conversations about the cyber attack there now. So I just want to express my appreciation for the thought that goes into the audit committee. It's a good way for us to ensure that we're being good stewards of public dollars. And the outreach program that your team has developed really came out of the ACH fraud that happened at that time. And I think there's a lot of good intended organizations that work with us, smaller organizations that partner with the port, and it is easy for them to fall for some of the phishing tricks and all of the things that are out there today. And technology is getting more complex. An organization like the port can get hacked, and you can imagine what that would mean for smaller organization. It's just that much more easier. And I think the program that you guys have stood up and the communication plan that you have with talking to those small businesses as well as those nonprofit organizations is great. So I just wanted to express my gratitude. I appreciate that you guys are an independent body that is ensuring that we have good controls in place, there's good oversight, and that there is transparency and accountability in the way that we do port business. So those are my comments. Appreciate you.
Commissioner.
Commissioner Cho.
Yes, I want to also express how much I miss the audit committee. I was telling Commissioner Mohammed, it's the most underrated committee on this commission. But I also wanted to ask you a question, Glenn, in light of the cybersecurity attack we had this fall, what plans we have in 25 for after action, now that we're over most of the issues, but not all yet.
So
that can go to Steve too, whichever person feels like they can answer it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to that, Commissioner, because right now we're still undergoing the response to the incident. We've undertaken a third-party contractor in order to collect all the lessons learned, in addition to what went right and what went wrong. So we're going to be issuing a report. This is similar to what we did another large event with the Horizon aircraft issue. So we have this. We're glad to talk to Commissioner in depth about our study plan for this. I think we send some things about that. But that is our plan, to undertake that, because we're still undergoing changes to that. So we'll produce that report here, and we're undertaking a large effort so that can be done in a holistic approach.
Great, thanks, Steve.
I'll just round out by saying that it was an honor to chair the audit committee this last year. I'd like to thank Commissioner Calkins for plugging in at the last second and support that role, as he did on a number of occasions. And just to really commend the work that you and your entire team does. We at the Port are incredibly proud of being an example of excellence and efficiency and accuracy and transparency in government, and the audit committee is exactly where the rubber meets the road in promoting accountability, transparency, and oversight for us as a commission. So thank you for being the vehicle of that. We commend your work, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to the next item for presentation. If the clerk will read it into the record, and Executive Director Metrick will then introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 11B, Draft 2025 International Policy Agenda Briefing.
Commissioners, as the Port continues to lead on issues related to our triple bottom line, it is important that we engage with like-minded ports and organizations at the international level. This is important as we tackle global issues like the reduction of greenhouse gases and as we look for other economic opportunities. This briefing will cover our international priorities as well as highlight opportunities for engagement in the coming year. The key recommended updates include a provision related to the FIFA World Cup, among many more. We'll seek your adoption of this agenda at the Commission meeting on February 11th. The presenter this afternoon is Melissa Parks, Maritime Sustainability within our Government Relations program, and she's the program manager. Thanks.
Thank you. I know my title got a little unwieldy. Commissioners, Madam President, Executive Director Metrick, thank you so much.
Excuse me, I just wanted to note for the record that Commissioner Mohammed has exited public session. Back to you.
I was able to go through it first. Yeah.
And make sure that everybody online is on. Pierce, you are not on mute. Thank you, friend.
Okay, we're good. All right. So yes, I am the Maritime Sustainability Government Relations Program Manager, and I'm briefing you today on our draft 2025 International Policy Agenda. Next slide, please. So today we're going to look back at the port's engagement from this last year. I'll give some current context for what we can expect in this year. Then provide an overview of the agenda that's continuing from last year, followed by some updates that staff recommend for this year, and finally close out with some next steps and opportunities for engagement. Next slide. So the port has ambitious goals, and we really pride ourselves on being leaders at the forefront of change in industry practices. And to make large-scale change in these global industries, we need large-scale global action. So engaging internationally with standard-making organizations and building relationships with other ports is an important element of the collaboration that's required for that kind of change. And while we have less direct influence over the standards and policies created internationally than at the city and state level, for example, we can utilize the change that we're making here at home as an example abroad. And in fact, that's our international currency. It's why we're invited to some important global events. And last year was the port's first international agenda, and we found it to be a good resource for helping focus our engagement and keeping a shared awareness across the port of our international policy positions. Next slide. So 2024 was a very successful year, building and maintaining very strong relationships with international ports and partners. Our engagement included the International Leadership Mission to South Korea, Maritime Week in Singapore, the Coast Salish Story Pole dedication in our sister port of Kobe, Japan, the International Association of Ports and Harbors World Port Conference in Germany, Port Authorities Roundtable, and a Smart Ports Conference in Spain. We also engaged multiple times with our sister ports of Busan, South Korea, Kobe, Japan, Rotterdam, Netherlands, and Singapore. And our sister ports are making really exciting headwinds around alternative fuels, especially. So it's been very valuable to observe these developments in person. And just as important as engaging abroad, we also hosted 35 delegations, around 500 visitors across all lines of business at the port, including aviation, maritime cargo, economic development, cruise, and fishing. On the policy front, we've seen some progress. So international policy moves incredibly slow. But we continue to see forward momentum at both the International Civil Aviation Organization, with its work implementing a global market-based measure for aviation emissions, as well as the International Maritime Organization, that I'll speak in more detail later on that one. Also, the Port's Director of Maritime Environment and Sustainability, Sarah Auger, is now participating at our International Association of Ports and Harbors Climate and Energy Committee. And this is really important because that committee oversees the association's policy positions at the International Maritime Organization. So it's a great development for us moving into the new year. Next slide. So where are we today? International diplomacy is in a state of change, and for the past few years, we've experienced rising global tensions and escalating conflicts regionally in Central Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. This global diplomatic instability could make it more difficult for the cooperation we need to make progress on global international policy goals and commitments. In addition, a change in U.S. leadership, including a new president, executive branch, and control of Congress, adds another layer of uncertainty to this. The federal government is our primary representative in these international standard-making bodies that are setting, for example, the global emission policies for aviation and maritime. It remains to be seen how active, how deeply, how soon the new administration is going to engage around our specific interests internationally. But that said, the port is not a stranger to being out in front of the federal government when it comes to our priorities. So regardless of the relationships between heads of state, ports have our own relationships, and we continue to convene to discuss global policy goals, share best practices, and continue to identify solutions for overcoming challenges that we all share. The port has the opportunity to really lean into direct diplomacy with sister ports and international organizations to continue to demonstrate how our local actions and investments are progressing our international policy goals. Next slide. So turning to the agenda, I want to highlight the overarching themes of the port's priorities that staff recommend continuing from last year, and they reflect the work that port staff are already engaging in. So in addition to these categories, staff also developed a set of broad principles around the importance of collaboration and transparency, equity, environmental justice, and sustainable development that will underpin our advocacy. So across these priorities, what we're looking for are opportunities to support and influence where it impacts our goals and missions across the port. When it comes to climate change and air pollution, an example that we're looking for is ways to support immediate action, such as agreements to develop zero-emission shipping partnerships. We continue to monitor for action and opportunities to engage around noise in both aviation and maritime. And we will continue to share our work to combat ocean acidification and our innovative projects to sequester carbon and improve marine health. And as we continue to explore and learn about alternative energy and fuels, we'll continue to track those developments to ensure that the new standards uphold the principles that I previously mentioned and consider the safety aspects of those fuels from an airport, seaport, and community perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, so recommended updates for this year. Staff are recommending that we add our support for the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The declaration is a comprehensive statement / framework addressing the rights specific of Indigenous peoples. Acknowledging support for this declaration is another opportunity for the port, in addition to the formal partnerships that we're making with local tribes, to demonstrate our support of Indigenous peoples and be more intentional sharing that support with our broader international partners. Also, very exciting, Seattle's hosting 2 major international soccer events in the next 2 years. Global soccer fans will have their eyes on us as hosts. And while this isn't technically a policy addition, it's worth acknowledging the importance of Seattle's reputation globally to make sure that we're seen as a welcoming international city. And I heard this from staff across the port, different lines of business. And so with so many international visitors coming this way, the port should really look for opportunities to partner and expand, especially our work to combat and reduce human trafficking in preparation for these major events. And finally, it's a very momentous year for global shipping policy. So members at the International Maritime Organization are supposed to agree on measures to reduce ships' greenhouse gas emissions and agree to a pricing tool to help drive the necessary transition to low and zero-emission shipping. Port staff recommend advocating in support of adoption of the agreed measures that we anticipate will be later this fall. And as I mentioned earlier, it remains to be seen to what extent the new U.S. administration will change or alter the United States' current position on these measures. But regardless, we know 2 things: that the IMO and member states as a whole have already agreed to zero emission by 2050 goals, and that the global shipping industry, the United States, other countries are already making very significant investments to decarbonize. So we're already kind of moving in that direction. As part of the pricing tool I mentioned that will be discussed, staff recommend advocating that ports be included as an eligible recipient of any revenue that's raised to support the transition to zero-emission shipping. Studies have estimated that more than $1 trillion, with a T, dollars are needed to decarbonize maritime, and 87% of that cost will be for landside infrastructure. Lastly, we recommend adding support for review of an existing policy tool called the Carbon Intensity Index, or CII. It rates ships on their energy efficiency, and it's been a very hot point of contention amongst members at the IMO, and so we support review of the tool with the goal of it more accurately accounting for the different operating profiles of ship types across business lines. Next slide. And that concludes my updates. I look forward to your feedback on the agenda, and we'll plan to submit a final version next month. But before we totally close out, some good opportunities to look forward to. With approval of the agenda, we'll begin outreach to the U.S. delegation to the IMO and International Association of Ports on the policy recommendations I just mentioned, as those discussions are already underway. Also, staff are looking to develop some strategic engagement opportunities around clean technology, clean energy, sustainable fuels with international partners and leaders in the energy transition. For example, in Ulsan, Korea, Singapore, and Hamburg, Germany, they're making very exciting developments there. Finally, the International Association of Ports and Harbors is celebrating its 70th anniversary in Kobe, Japan, where the organization originated, and we're planning to have a significant presence there given our sister port relationship and ongoing relationship with Kobe. So something to look forward to, and that's it. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, to my colleagues, I'll turn to you for questions. Commissioner Fellman.
Thanks for that presentation and very exciting stuff that we appreciate the expansion of the port's work into this international arena. I had two questions. One pertained to the carbon intensity discussion. That's primarily a cruise issue, right? In terms of the cruise industry has taken umbrage with the methodology.
It's more than the cruise industry. It's actually the whole International Chamber of Shipping, the tanker associations. It's really shared across industry associations at the IMO.
But there is general consensus around it. But
Consensus.
I mean, more agree than don't, right?
On the tool as it currently stands?
Yeah.
I'll say that at the last meeting, despite greenhouse gases being on the agenda, this new tool under development, the carbon intensity index had the most papers, right, from any of the other agenda topics. So there's a lot of discussion there.
A lot of different opinions.
Lots of different opinions. And we, the port took its time evaluating these different positions of our partners, the position of the U.S. delegation. And we don't see harm in reviewing the tool. I think it's been demonstrated that it works well for certain cargo ships, but it really doesn't account for other ship types. So we think that a review is worthy.
Great. And
Yeah.
one other thing, if that's okay?
Of course. Take your time.
So in light of the conversation we've been having about international tourism marketing, and I think the same thing, the term marketing as well as economic development, I prefer the word management in both contexts. We don't just promote, we manage. And but in light of the fact that we're about to experience the onslaught of FIFA, we don't have to do anything to advertise this, but we do have something to manage it. And I'm very concerned, and that's why I was working on the Snoqualmie project, that nearby communities are going to be subject to an onslaught of visitation that, and the sports fan at large may not be the most eco-aware individual. I mean, the Europeans in general, I think, are more so than we are, but be that as it may, I think having information before they get here, know before you go, first thing you pack is a sense of responsibility. You're not coming to Disneyland, and there are places to go other than just downtown Seattle, and that we have to share the wealth as well as disperse the impact. And so while I am not dismissive of the concerns raised by the community, I think in this next couple of years, we have some serious damage control to do. And that reaching out to the international community before they get here, you don't come to the trailhead and say, this is when you first have to think about the environment. So I just would like to push back a little bit on why this coming time is different than any other time because of the promotion that's occurring due to FIFA with or without us. So I just put that out there as, I think, a time when we particularly need our tourism management money.
Commissioner Cho.
Yeah, first, Melissa, thank you so much for all your tremendous work in bringing us this international policy agenda. I think that ever since we started doing this, which I believe was last year, the first year that we started doing this, our profile as an institution in the international community has gone up tremendously, partially because it allows us to bolster the tremendous work that our team is doing here at the Port of Seattle, you have no idea how many people come up to me and say, oh, I didn't realize the Port of Seattle was doing these things, right? And I do think that we're leading on so many different fronts, but also it allows us to go out and learn from other ports who are so much further ahead than us. Every time I travel to Asia and I see what they're doing on alternative fuels and stuff, gets me excited because we don't need to be the first mover on some of these things, and we can learn from the mistakes of other ports and how they've developed things. And I sincerely appreciate the fact that we've been able to engage with the IMO year after year, as well as many other organizations, which has resulted in many of us getting invited to different conferences and stuff like that. And so I'm hugely supportive of our international policy agenda. I really appreciate the engagement you continue to have with these organizations so that we can be part of the conversation. Because at the end of the day, we're one of many ports, and to the extent that a lot of the things that we do here can be a model for what other ports in North America are doing. We like to say we want to be the greenest port in North America, but the goal is not to be the only green port in North America. And so I think this is extremely effective and a crucial part of what we do here. So thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins.
Thank you, Melissa, for the presentation. I've had the privilege of working with you on a couple of topic areas, and I really want to focus on an area where I think the international agenda is truly the place where we need to be operating because of the dynamics that you already addressed, which is around energy. And I think what we found over the last couple of years is we have dedicated more organizational resources, Steve's time, Commissioner's time, other key subject matter experts at the port to a lot of this international engagement, is that there is a hunger for U.S. participation in some of these international conversations. And because of the nature of U.S. ports, that we are decentralized, that there is no, it's not a federal port system that is funded and overseen by a big federal agency. It is really local community governments like the Port of Seattle really attempting to kind of step into the fray here. And because on the one hand, the Port of Seattle has said, we are committed to being the greenest port in North America and willing to take on demonstration projects, to make aggressive commitments to decarbonization. It's given us an opportunity to represent effectively the U.S. in a lot of spaces. And you mentioned a few here. I've had a couple of opportunities this year at Climate Week and then again last month in D.C. to speak on behalf of ports collectively for in international arenas. And so that is why not only do I not want us to push back from the table, I want us to even invest further in this, because genuinely, this is where your slide on page 3 of the slide deck, I've stolen that from you and used it in various presentations, because this is absolutely where, I think if there's anything in our obituaries, it's going to have to do with the strides we take as a port in decarbonization. This is our inflection point right now. And because we do have a big footprint in international cargo, in cruise, and in airlines, it gives us an opportunity to make real effective changes. And while we may have low global impact, if we can demonstrate that it's possible at a port authority that is, on a global scale, sort of medium-sized, as one report put it, we have to come up with bespoke solutions. And I think that's really important for folks to remember. And I guess part of what we're asking our constituents is, give us the leeway, both in terms of resources and time, to experiment with some of this stuff, because there will be experiments that fail in decarbonization. But we need the capacity to try, whether that's the Pacific Northwest to Alaska Green Corridor or the relationship with Busan. We don't yet know what the answer is, and so we need to be able to experiment. And that's not really a comfortable space usually for public agencies, but this is not a usual time. We need to be able to see what it will take to produce the kind of quantities of methanol that we know we need for green methanol that we need for not only the cargo traffic, but also the cruise lines. And we know if we don't do it, that some other port will take this business and it will be status quo ante, and that's the worst possible outcome. So I think we're all willing to be courageous and step out a little bit and devote some resources to it, but we got to stay at the table to be able to do that. So I really appreciate all the work, and I mean, I think I come to you often and ask for, I want to make it sound like I'm smart, so I talk to you first before I go and do these things, but I really appreciate all the efforts you put into this.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I just, as you go out to the broader global community to talk about the work that we're doing, and form partnerships and everything that you just talked about, what is your contingency plan, or what is your anticipated impact of a new presidential administration taking office that consistently undermines all of the priorities that we've listed here in sustainability, economic opportunity, and addressing issues of climate change?
I think that's where the emphasis on our direct diplomacy with sister ports, especially, or some of these strategic ports, really is going to come into play. I think that in a lot of ways, like Commissioner Calkin said, the work that we do at home in a lot of ways is sort of independent to our locality, right? It would be great to have federal support, but we don't always get it. But we're going to keep working and moving ahead regardless. And so I think that our strength will be sharing those continued innovations, how we continue to address these goals, and in the face of maybe a federal government that doesn't share those priorities, and continuing to show globally that we're still moving forward, that we still want to be competitive in this energy transition. And yeah,
That, to me, that's what it means when we tell the public that local government is your first line of defense. It doesn't stop the work, and we still have lots of opportunities to advance the work. Also, in a political climate that we know will fan the flames of division rather than cohesion, I think it's so important that we are intentional about building those relationships. And I think about, you talked about our sister port relationship with Kobe, Japan. And when we go there, the embassy briefed us and talked about how Kobe and Japan is a friendly neighbor in an increasingly rough neighborhood. It's a place of strategic importance and advantage that actually lends itself towards security. So all is to say, this is tremendously important work, and it's really quite a privilege as a commissioner to be able to go along with you in some of these trips where we're building those relationships. So thank you so much for the presentation today. If there are no further questions or comments from my colleagues, Executive Director Metric.
Thank you, President Hasagawa. If I can just add to that, what Melissa's answer was about our engagement, if things change at the national level for us, which we probably expect they do, is that, for us, it's also economic opportunity as well. As when we were traveling to South Korea and we saw that they were using e-methanol, and you come to find out that the e-methanol was produced in Houston and then traveled around the world to there. There's economic opportunities in here as well as this, and that's something that we're looking at as well. And then also, developments are happening, whether or not the U.S. is a leader in it. We know we want to ensure and see what's happening in the European Union, because they're moving ahead with some things that are very parallel to what we're trying to do. So there's lots of lessons learned here that we both can look at as both as opportunities and influencers in that continued work. And I think this is important work, and I really appreciate the Commission's support for this work.
Sure. It's sad that all of these presentations come in a silo, because it really does lend itself towards the presentations that we had in our federal legislative agenda and our state legislative agenda, and all of our local priorities. And that's sort of the representation of the work that we're doing right here, leading the transformation on a global scale. So just marrying that big picture together, I think, is just really cool to see. So thank you so much. All right, and that brings us to our last presentation. What the clerk will read it into the record, and Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. Yes, item 11C, Public Art Program 2024 Annual Report.
Commissioners, in 2019, under your leadership, we created the Port-wide Arts and Cultural Program Policy Directive. This annual report will provide you an update on the delivery of major art installations, collection, restoration, asset management, the status of funds, and how the team incorporates equity, diversity, and inclusion principles into its work. And the presenters are Tommy Gregory, Public Art Program Coordinator, and then Annabelle Goick, the Public Art Program Coordinator within that. So.
Thank you so much. Double check your mic is on, right? Great, okay. Yeah, appreciate y'all's time today. Executive Director Metric and Commission, as you stated, we're presenting the annual report per our policy and guidelines. Being in compliance with that, after our resolution 3766. Very proud of the year we just completed. So the public art program had another kind of record-breaking year as it pertains to capital projects, commissions, acquisitions, temporary art, and conservation. So we'll go over all of those right now. First slide after this capital project slide, we'll show you just the artists that are under contract today, which is again, like I said, record-breaking year. Some of these were ongoing from last year. Some will be done at the end of this year. Some won't be done until 2026, but all in preparation for the FIFA events coming to Seattle. Very proud of these. And again, this is just commissions. This doesn't include the artists that we acquired work from in 2024. So really robust group and diverse group of professionals. Next slide, please. Okay, jumping into some of the milestones in 2024, successful projects that we worked on were with capital improvement projects, Phase 4 and Phase 5 restrooms. We completed Phase 4, dove into Phase 5 with artists. On the left of this slide is Annabelle and I with Shuli Sade, based out of New Jersey. In the middle is a new installation in restroom B3 from local artist Minhee England. She's Seattle-based, only about an 8-minute drive from the airport. And then on the far right was the last of those installed, which was artist Bill Fitzgibbons, based in San Antonio, Texas. We all worked very collaboratively with those and included partners from CPO, architecture, F&I, maintenance. So a whole group of folks that came together to bring in these 3 restroom projects to safely to fruition. Next slide, please. Okay, so staying in the vein of our capital projects, we have 7 new pieces coming into the North Main Terminal. This slide represents 6 of those 7 artists. The last one, Morgan Madison, is still in design phase, but very proud of this kind of breadth of artists that we're working with, from locals like Barry Johnson, Sarah Moore, who's going to be installing very soon, both on the ticketing level, departures of SEA, and then artists like Susani Park and Jennifer Steinkamp doing monumental installations, first ever jumbo video work going into the ticketing area right next to Alaska's ticketing zone. Really excited about all of these artists. Julie Oppert, Matt Saws, both local. And all of these, like I said, will be in before the big FIFA games. So next slide, please. So this was one that we completed just before the end of the year. And it was a pilot project that came in collaboration with the building department and F&I, where we utilized these kind of blank canvases, which were the stainless steel bollard covers. These pieces this is a pilot project. So I saw this in 2019 as an opportunity, presented it, took a little time to come to fruition, but we did successfully complete the commissioning of these 2 artists that were selected, as well as the installation of those 2, all in 2024. So we showed that these are very manageable projects, and it also allows us the ability to work with a diverse group of artists, because these aren't monumental, hold rooms, gates, exterior projects. These are very manageable sizes. These apparatuses are already engineered, so it does allow us a lot of boxes already checked, and then so we basically selected some great artists. On the left is KT Hancock. She's also a Seattle-based artist. This is her first major airport commission. And then on the right, it was a collaboration between Peruvian artist Sandra Williams and then Kyle Olson. If you happen to travel to Skybridge 1 or 6, you'll see both of those greeting you into the airport. Next slide, please. Oh, I'll hand it over to Annabelle to address these.
Awesome. Thank you, Tommy. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good afternoon, Executive Director Metric. I'm Annabelle Guevec, she, her pronouns, Public Art Program Coordinator. I am going to talk about the conferences that we attended this year. So Tommy and I went to the EEE Arts in the Airport in Philadelphia. We were joined by numerous other airports, such as San Diego, Denver, Kansas City, and San Francisco. I was invited to talk with Kathy Greenwood from the Albany Airport about institutional partnership. It was a great conference. Looking forward to the next one. And Pete Fleming, public art technician, went to the PACIN conference. The PACIN stands for Preparation, Art Handling, Collection Care Information Network. It regroups art collection experts from across the US and abroad. It's a conference that happens every 2 years, so next one will be in 2026. Next slide, please. And checkpoint one. So for this project, we received over 250 submissions. For the cases and the wall opportunity, we have over half of this acquisition that are from local female artists. The paintings that you will see on the wall are, as of right now, being framed by a local Wimby business in Seattle, and the artworks that will be in the cases are some pedestals are being created specifically for those artworks. Checkpoint one is supposed to open early April, and we'll be installing those works mid-March. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now I'm going to be diving into some of the conservation and maintenance projects that we've done. So this highlights the works from our public art technician, Pete Fleming and Sarah Krause. Next slide, please. Thank you. On the left, you have Pete cleaning one of the oldest artworks that we have in our collection. That was one of the first acquisition. It's a Frank Stella painting. The artist passed away last year. It was a fairly long process since it took 8 hours. And the artworks on the right is a piece by local artist Trempin. It's been running 24/7 for 20 years, and since it's a kinetic piece, it needs some regular maintenance. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have some projects such as the Cable Griffith piece on the left. One of the panels was failed, so it needed to be replaced. So we just want to give a shout out to Ian Arlo from AV Maintenance, who helped us coordinate the reinstallation of this panel, thanks to the contractor Herzog Glass. And the project on the right from Richard Elliott, that was an artwork that needed urgent protection from the North Main Terminal Project construction work. Next slide, please. All right, we have more restoration and conservation projects. It's been a busy year. The first picture on the left includes an artwork by the local glass hero, Dick Weiss. One of his panels was damaged, so it needed to be fixed. And the two pictures in the middle, that's a long-term project that's been happening. The first damage we noticed in 2019, and we are happy to announce that now the wheels, the 56 wheels that were damaged, are now back in place at the rental car facilities. And last but not least, the picture on the right is an artwork by Robert Rauschenberg that used to be in the Sea Concourse and is now in the A Concourse after it was restored by a local expert and reinstalled by Pete and Sarah. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Annabelle. And kind of very modest in the way those conservation projects we showed you were there were definitely a few more to add, but again, a record year for us being good stewards of our historic collection. Busiest program when it comes to conservation in 2024, and we succeeded in so many. And that also comes at great thanks to the Public Art Board who support all of these endeavors. Next slide, please. So our new installations that were some of these were from assets that were kind of luckily get to float around between different venues in the port. Like on the far right is the Francis Celentano piece that had graced the walls here at Pier 69 for some time, but was due to some conservation efforts, we went ahead and did a light cleaning and then relocated it to the mezzanine at the aviation office building at SEA. It's technically an aviation asset, and it's now housed next to its larger, I guess we could call it Big Brother in a way, also a Francis Celentano piece called Delta Spectrum 2. So now, visitors can see both of those pieces in all its glory. And then on the left, you'll see a number of slides. There's Pete working with our former college intern, Daphne Maiden, who just completed her internship with us last year. She was extremely helpful on day-to-day things as well as art handling, like you've seen in this slide. But we're really happy to relocate a lot of works, and it's our goal to keep all of these visual assets on public view. So whenever anything is either displaced due to a conservation need or due to a construction project, we try to do our due diligence in keeping them on view in certain spots. Like the Ben Wright was a fairly new acquisition, and it's now installed adjacent to the security, what is that called, Annabelle? Oh, security break room. So at SEA, but really happy to have another neon piece in the collection. Next slide, please. Oh, temporary art. Extremely busy year for temporary art as well. Next slide shows you some of those successes. In early 2024, we did our Black History Month exhibit featuring two extremely prominent and well-known Seattle-based artists, and Barbara Earl Thomas and Marita Dingus. Both of these works were a part of a temporary exhibit. They're both now they were acquired in our permanent collection. Will be on view with the other Checkpoint 1 artworks that Annabelle discussed. So hopefully by April, the traveling public will see works from Barbara Earl Thomas and Marita Dingus on permanent display. Next slide. Thank you. We love to collaborate with other local institutions and campaigns. On the left shows work by Jimmy Onderegg that was installed during the city's celebration of glass art called Refract. We showed a number of glass works. These were a few of those located right at the exit of Concourse A and right below the mezzanine at the AOB. And on the right, we collaborated with the Highline Heritage Museum. Thank you to Marco Milanese for helping coordinate a lot of those efforts, but that was in celebration of our 75th anniversary at SEA. We showed some historic photos, those are still on display, should be coming down soon, and make way for more temporary art opportunities. Next slide, please. Oh, and then some really sad but beautiful events that occurred. So Chuan Nguyen was a local art administrator as well as an artist in his own right, and he tragically passed away in 24. And we worked closely with his widow, who's also in the collection, Lian Nguyen. She's a visual artist as well, and we borrowed some works from Tuan to display in his memoriam. Really great pieces, and we're really happy to be able to kind of pay homage to an artist who gave a lot to the community as a public art administrator, and it was good to show his work in the airport after his passing. And then shortly after those works came down from display, we collaborated with Cornish Film School, and specifically Charles Mudede, a kind of hometown hero who teaches at Cornish in the film department. And we are showing 10 original films from the Cornish students. So really proud of that. It's the first time ever to have temporary exhibits in that zone of local filmmakers. So that'll be on display for the next 6 months. So if you're in Concourse or exiting Concourse A or going to the AOB, take a look at those from local student talent. Next slide, please. Hope I'm good on time. I'll try to zip through these last couple. Like I said, we did a ton in 2024. So these were some non-aviation projects, maritime and at the port headquarters. Next slide will show you, I'm sorry, this is not temporary art. Forgive me, this is Fisherman's Terminal, an artist, Mary Koss, who is making her way through the design phase, working at Fisherman's Terminal, but through the site improvement project. So this is an artist we didn't get to discuss, I think, on our last annual report, but is now hit the ground running and working closely with, or alongside Todd Juvenile and Shogo Ota on those maritime innovation projects. So good to see that some of these Fisherman Terminal projects are starting to come to fruition, at least through the design phase. Next slide, please. So here's the temporary exhibit, sorry. So diving into, going back to the temporary exhibit topic, we were very happy to do our first ever one night only neon installation here at Pier 69. Not only kind of celebrating the building, this was also in collaboration with Refract during that citywide glass celebration, but we were able to do a one night only neon installation with local artist Kelsey Fernkamp, where he highlights kind of the architecture and the nature that surrounds Pier 69 with these extremely well-made, elegant neon frameworks. So that was Commissioner Fellerman spoke at that event, along with Leah St. Lawrence from Arcade Magazine, who helped sponsor it, and forgive me, Michelle Bufano with Refract and the Chihuly Gardening Glass. It was a great evening, and just appreciate everybody's support on making that one happen. And currently right now, there's still a temporary exhibit on view at Pier 69, right out these doors, with local artist Megan Prince. She's based in West Seattle and does these really monumental soft sculptures from reclaimed and upcycled materials, referencing nautical themes and also kind of a little homage to our fishing industry with these net-like structures. And I believe that I'm sorry, one more, two more slides, I'm sorry, Commissioners. The next slide will show you, I think, a little bit of a nod to not just the art program presenting to you, but I think it's showing that our efforts are being heard, acknowledged, and hopefully revered citywide. So we had two really thorough articles that came out, one through the Seattle Times and one through a Public Display Art, which is an art-specific magazine based here in Seattle. And both of them, the Seattle Times article, these kind of things don't happen in a vacuum. They obviously were paying attention to the work that we've been steadily trying to succeed in. And, Annabelle helped coordinate efforts getting the right photography. External relations was really helpful in helping conduct a tour, and it led to these positive outcomes. And I'm hoping that, we see a little bit of the present in what the Seattle Times article was, and then Amanda Manitok, with a writer for Public Display Art, gave a nice, thorough background in the port's collection history, and as well as a nod to what's coming in the future. So anyway, these things, we just want you to know that they're kind of resonating with the public, and we're very proud to let you all know that was a good milestone in 2024 to get some good press on all of the artists we've been working with, and it's very well-deserved. Next slide. Ending with our public art org chart, just to show where we currently sit from a staffing standpoint and what we're kind of developing with strategic plans, working with Lemire Group right now through Maritime to define a 5-year plan with them, as well as just looking at what project management opportunities will be since we are ramping up and this collection isn't slowing down in any way. Wanted to show you all this slide. And I think that is the last one, right, Annabelle? All right. Very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'll turn to my colleagues for their questions and their comments. Commissioner Cho.
When I go to the airport, I tend to park at the far end of the lot and go up to the 4th floor. And I noticed when those lipstick-like bollards, I think it's awesome, and I would love to figure out how to make it not a pilot, but really do it across the airport, not just in the parking lot, but we installed bollards in the arrivals and departures area. The one back furthest south is actually pretty pronounced because it's like different colors, and it really stands out. I actually didn't get to see the other ones that you installed, which looks like, is it mountain range? Is it like one of the mountain ranges and whatnot?
Mount Rainier.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's a really creative way of using something that generally is an obstacle and an eyesore and turn it into a piece of art. And so we'd love to see if we can do that across the airport. And I think it would be a nice little scavenger hunt for folks to see what we're doing across the airport on the exterior side. We don't often talk about art outside of the terminal or outside of the actual facilities. So I'm glad we're starting to get a little creative in the parking lot and other areas. So kudos to you guys, and thank you to the artists who did that.
Well, Commissioner Cho, you can't see it. There's a little tear of joy in my eye because that was a long time coming, trying to get that project to get some legs. And I did see. I'm glad that to have that kind of testimonial is going to go a long way, and I hope that we'll be able to deliver on your request there. We did see it as something that is an opportunity for way more artists to get involved in this collection, and it's a way to trim the hedges because you don't need a ticket to pick somebody up. You don't need a ticket to the light rail there, and those works are prominently on display, and they're quite safe and very well made. So they'll be there for years to come.
Commissioner Calkins.
Yeah, I love the whimsy of those, and I also love the gravity of some of the memorials, and quite honestly, the monumentality of I forget the name of the work that in the North Satellite as you come up the escalators. The
Boundary.
Boundary. Thank you. The RuPaul. It's I just love what you've done. I'm really curious to know more about these future positions, and I think you deem them ethereal arts, the ones that are.
Yes, from a temporary standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are we? How are we thinking about expanding the arts that, whether it's music or performance or other things that could potentially benefit from an expanded role? I ask this question because I think it aligns really well with our aviation team's attempt to make the passenger experience as wonderful as possible. And a part of that is encouraging people to get there in times that they're not stressed out, that they do get to take advantage of what is an extraordinary public space, whether they're inside or outside of security.
Yeah. Well, Annabelle, if you have any comments on that, please feel free to chime in. I just wanted to have one response to Commissioner Calkins there, is that the ask, I think, has been heard. I think Executive Director Metric mentioned this once, is that we do need to have more temporary works for a number of reasons, but also just keeping the experience fresh for regular travelers, for people who work at the airport as well. I think it's important to keep that environment. You mentioned whimsy. Just exciting, new, fresh. And the great thing about temporary art is that it's not really a maintenance issue because it goes away. So I do feel there's a lot of benefits in that, and it does help us expand our repertoire of what we can show. And I do want to collaborate more with the music program because that is run through a different department. But it's always been, I think, a topic to have us be integrated together a little bit more, and we will work on that in 2025. But yeah, I think that we have some great ideas for this coming year as it pertains to artists and organizations to collaborate with. And hopefully, upon our next presentation, you'll see some great new things. And if you have any, you were actually extremely integral in the Bezos Foundation temporary mural that we have up. So if you hear of anything or any partners that we should be collaborating with, know that I'll always follow up on those. So I got my ears ready. Any other thoughts on temporary art? Annabelle's always helpful on those and is being shy, but we'll keep our momentum going there.
Not that I have any connection to Bezos. I just
No. I didn't mean to imply that.
I was just said, hey Jeff, you got this program. No.
You've got temporary art, right?
Great, Commissioner Fellman.
Well, thanks. It's always fun to see the review that you do. It's extraordinary, even though I serve on the committee. To get the whole overview in one shot reminds me how much I appreciate being able to support you to the degree I can. And I just had a few thoughts here. One, I like the org chart. It's getting old. I'm from New York. I can hear myself when I get tired. The org chart shows a bit of a vision that doesn't exist right now. And so that integration with the art, with the music program, and the ultimate integration with maritime this has been a work in progress for a while. So what is the time frame for this? It's a consultant's report. I keep on asking this question. I feel like it's squeezing a balloon.
No, that's great. The timeframe is coincidentally imminent. It's coming. They've completed their strategic report draft, and that should be presented in the next Public Art Program Board meeting. But also, I'm meeting tomorrow with Stephanie Jones-Stebbins and Lance and some other ELTs in discussing the inevitable coming to fruition of a governance strategy to make sure that either we do truly go port-wide or we hire somebody to handle Maritime has some great assets on public view and they need to be cared for. So to me, that's my main goal and what can happen tomorrow. But I hope when we have our first board meeting, you're still a part of our board. I really hope in 25. Okay, great.
Yes.
So I think you'll be able to, we could review that strategic plan and see what the next steps and the reality of other involvements need to be to see it to fruition.
And the potential staffing needs for that. All right, a couple things to run through. I was just wondering, do artists take any umbrage of creating bathroom art? Just kidding. All right. So it's like, I said, wow, look at these beautiful things. And somebody said, well, it's bathroom art. I think one of the great things about the lipstick, sorry about that. The lipstick is, one of the things that's great about it is that it's, right there at eye level, right? You interact with it. And so, and I agree with Commissioner Cho's point of like, what else can we do to the other bollards? But I'm just thinking about what else can we do with other things that you just like encounter. And I remember like in the baggage claim area, we have that architectural, structural poles that exist there. And I think originally they were brown. I think you painted them white or somebody painted them white.
Yeah, F&I architecture, somebody must have mentioned it or just had a vision that needed a little sprucing up, so that they've all been painted. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was due to one of the comments you made late 2023, but we did get a budget to wrap those columns that are kind of just, kind of not only visually boring to see, but kind of like physical obstructions. So we've kind of solved the visual problem and the physical problem, and we've put art cases around those. So now instead of just seeing these structural burdens, those structural burdens are now going to be housing temporary art and possibly permanent art. So you will see those hopefully being populated with art by the end of this year.
Well, that's great. And like the poles were dark brown and just lightening up the basement with no clear sky ceiling. I just see that as still, leaning timbers or whatever.
Yeah.
There's work to be done, I think, there. The one thing I just did want to note that in the maritime side, I had a macaque carver come and visit me just last week, and we took him to say hi to Steve, and we walked by a couple of the masks that were hanging on that wall, and he was dumbstruck. He said, like, he's seen these in books, and that the artists that are there was like, if this guy says they're real, I know they're real. He was former chairman of the Macaque tribe, but he, so anyway, but there are these hidden gems that we have dispersed around, in maritime that, I don't know, we could maybe give them even more play, or maybe the plaques can be, whatever the case may be. It's like, I was just delighted to see that somebody of his prestige acknowledged what a great collection we have. And that piece, right as we walk down here, the large panel, he was blown away with. In fact, he showed me some stuff when I looked at it that I didn't see at the first. Anyway, to conclude with your temporary art discussion, I really appreciated the work you did with the Schmidt Ocean Trust, and I think with Steve's leadership on the Friends of the Waterfront, that there's these opportunities where these programmings that's going to go on in the course of the next year or so, 5 years, that there may be real opportunities for the arts program and the Friends of the Waterfront work to go hand in hand. Still, we were talking about World Oceans Day possibly, and maybe another effort with the Schmidt Ocean Trust and folks like that. I just see that we have these, performance type things going to go on, and to the degree your creativity could be integrated in it, I think would make it all the more interesting.
Totally open to it and excited to see what possibilities are there.
So I just have two questions. What is for members of the public, what is I want to say that this is a wonderful representation of our culture, our heritage, and our vibrancy as a region. for local artists who are interested in submitting their pieces, or for local artists who are interested in being commissioned, what is the process and how can they apply? How do they gain access?
Good question. And I think that with our website being redeveloped and refined, I'm hoping that it's articulated very clearly. If not, Annabelle, I know, is actively working on making these kind of demystifying the public art process.
Yeah.
But Annabelle, if you want to weigh in on that, by all means. I also just wanted to say that there's 2 open right now. So if anybody is seeing this and interested, there's 2 major opportunities that are being posted on our website at the moment. One is for the South Concourse Evolution Plan. 2 major commissions that are going to be people have complained in the past that we get to the table a little too late. These projects don't come to fruition until 2033, so anybody selected has a lot of time to make their masterpiece come to fruition. And then aside from that, there's another one, Annabelle, that's open, right? Or that we're getting ready to open. Sorry, continue. You weigh in on that because you're the master draftsperson on those.
Yes, so most of our RFQs, requests for qualifications, are being posted on our website, and I also work with other cultural partners such as Folk Culture, Artist Trust, and then I also work with national websites such as CodaWorks and publicartists.org just to really spread the word and make sure that as many people as possible are aware that we have projects going on. So like Tom mentioned, we have 2 right now for the SCE project. We will have another opportunity for the CCE sensory room, probably being posted in the next month or so. We can only encourage artists to keep an eye on our website, social media pages as well. We work closely with external relations to share the words about what's going on at the airport. And we also work closely with CPO to create a document explaining artists what does the process look like if you want to apply for an RFQ, request for qualification, or for an RFA, request for acquisition. So this will get posted soon and hopefully will answer some questions.
And Commissioner, one more note on that is that we have had a lot of public feedback, and I'd say for the most part, I'm happy to report that we've been told this is the easiest process for public art applications in the country. Like it's not just for somebody with 30 years experience. We're looking to really diversify the collection, and like I've mentioned, trimming the hedges a number of times. It's not just for accessibility for people seeing the work, but also for people applying.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say the opportunities are posted publicly on the website, but you have to check it to see the RFQs come up. And you will also post on social media to signal when that is coming live on the website. Can you share what your social media platforms are and what your handles are? Are you on Facebook? Is it X?
So we don't manage those social media pages. It's external relations. But if you go on the Port of Seattle website, and then same for I know they are on Instagram and Facebook or Meta. I don't know which one. It's Meta.
Yeah, I mean the feedback that I've gotten from members of the public is that the port's application process is like it's very difficult to be able to know when there's opportunities, and then when they do get on the website, it's not necessarily intuitive. That's just the feedback that I'm getting, and so maybe what I'm going to suggest is that there's like an intentional process with external relations where there's some sort of a communication when there's opportunities, so we can be proactive about that. And then the cyber attack, I think, is just a wake-up call for all of us to review our web pages and functionality and the user experience. So just want to flag that for
I appreciate
staff.
that feedback, and I think that I'll take that immediately up towards external relations and find out how we could be more prominently displayed, because we're proud of these, and it takes a lot of work to get these RFQs drafted, generated, and shared. So we don't want to be, screaming into the ether. We want people to know that these opportunities are there to apply to. So I'll take that and run with it, Commissioner Hasegawa.
Thank you very much. Okay, and one last comment from Commissioner
Well,
Fellman.
just to follow up on your question, artists don't necessarily look to the Port of Seattle for their opportunities. In fact, one of those articles said, since when do airports become museums?
Yeah.
Right? So, but you said you're publishing in art magazines, right? So, so that to me is like, that's where you're doing some, not just doing articles, but actually putting out RFPs and stuff like that. So maybe that's something that President Hasegawa would want to know, to share with her constituents about really in those venues where artists would be encountering it more likely.
Sure.
No, yeah, and thank you. Well, I think that making sure the public knows about these is extremely important to us, because again, we want to give the opportunity for everybody to have their work presented to the selection panelists. And I mean, short of, if you could ask anybody that hops from Art Walk to Art Walk monthly or weekly, because there's some in Belltown, there's some in Capitol Hill, there's some in Pioneer Square, you will see my gray head running around all those openings. And I'm always trying to spread the positive word that we are a job creator for the creative economy in this region.
Actually, that's exactly, I got from the Pioneer Square Art Walk is where I was at an exhibition and somebody was like, this is, yeah, I said, I want this in the airport. And they go, I tried, I got confused, and it hasn't come up. So it's like, okay, I'll ask Tommy.
Well, yeah, no, that's great. And you rest assured, we'll make sure that we're screaming from a bigger platform, because we're very proud of these opportunities, and we want everybody to feel like they get a fair shake in applying.
It's a tremendous platform. Thank you very much for your presentation today. I
Thank you,
appreciate
President
it.
Hasegawa.
And that does conclude today's business agenda. I will turn to my colleagues to see if you have any closing comments or referrals to committee. Anyone want to say anything nice about me?
You know, I think it was a beautiful event today. It was really, and I, as I've said to you before, I think you're a great ambassador for the organization. And it was celebratory and concise, and I think there was room filled with love, and I think we're all the better for it. So thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir. And Executive Director Metrick.
Ditto, Commissioner, on that.
Oh,
It was great.
Thank you. You don't have your lei, though.
I do have it. I
okay.
didn't want to ruin it.
And with that, the time is 2:53, Commissioners, and we are adjourned. Okay.